by miracle of sound. Alright, and welcome back to the Shardbreaker podcast. This is episode 1 of Alloy of Law, which is Mistborn Era 2. I'm your host, Midnight, and I'm here with Mythic.
Hello.
And Darkness.
Hello.
And we get no epigraphs for Mistborn Era 2, which is different compared to Mistborn Era 1, so we go straight into Chapter 1, with Wax's, of course, point of view, 5 months after the prologue. And he's currently at a fancy party at Set Mansion, with people who call him Lord Waxilium or Lord Ladrian. Makes his way towards a back room that has new electric lights, and then pushes out onto a balcony and into the mist. As he leans against the balcony railing, he considers how wonderful of a city Elendel is, as it was designed by Harmony himself. It had been where he had grown up, and where he returned to after Lessie's death, and his summons because of his uncle's death. So what do you think about electricity? It's a new invention.
It's not new. What are you talking about? We have had electricity for years.
It's new for them.
Yeah, well, they're not us.
What do you think about them getting electricity, Darkness?
I was thinking about that, and I'm just like, it's interesting how they have that now and they didn't have that back then, and like I was thinking about how this opens up to so many different things they can work with, including mixing their powers and electricity and all that stuff, and it kind of makes sense how fast they advance,
Yeah. I mean, specifically the Lord Ruler was keeping technology from advancing, so it's not surprising that, like, there'd be a technological boom once they kind of had their cities up and running, because obviously they had to, like, rebuild everything, but after that, it's kind of like, oh, we can actually start working on things without the Lord Ruler coming down and smiting us.
Right.
Also, what do you think about the fact that Sazed specifically designed the capital city, apparently?
Kind of cool, to be honest.
How do they know that?
I mean, I'm assuming
Harmony
it's
did
part of their history. I'm assuming maybe he worked with, like, Spook and the others and was like, hey, you should build it like this.
Oh no. They gotta tell me how they know that first before I believe it.
I mean, they specifically state at the end of Mistborn Era 3, as well as in this book, that they're like, oh yeah, Say's left behind these books, remember? And it's like, so he might have been like, here's some blueprints in the books for the city. Because later in these chapters, they say that Say specifically talked about electricity in those books that he left for them, which they call the founding words. So yeah, he left everything that he had in his metal mines, as well as a bunch of stuff he saw from, like, Godhood, of like, oh, we should already have these sorts of technologies, but the Lord Ruler prevented them. But yeah, so Lady Avery Set, an older woman, comes out to tell him that there are people he should meet, but he replies he'll come inside after he's gotten some air. Wax was supposed to be trying to find himself a wife, as he needed help after how his uncle had run down their family's finances. However, his uncle had also offended the majority of the upper class. Wax then jumps off the third-story balcony and drops a bullet casing, pushing it down so that he could use it to gracefully push himself over the garden's wall. He ends up in the coach area, and he finds the coach that took him to the party so that he can switch his nice coat for his mist coat. He moves his guns from underarm holsters to his hips and thinks he needs smaller weapons and that he should go looking for Renette at some point, as long as she doesn't try and shoot him on sight. So what do you think about Wax's struggle to be part of normal city life?
It reminds me of someone.
Does it?
Yeah. It's the same type of struggle that Vin had at the very beginning,
Yeah, she struggled to learn all the rules, but I feel like later on she more so struggled to not be part of the upper society.
Yeah.
than she struggled to be a part of it. Whereas Wax is kind of the opposite. He grew up in normal society and then left it, and now he's like, oh, this is I wish I was just out doing lawman stuff again, out in the roughs.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like the opposite of Ben in that regard. What do you think, Mythic?
I mean, I don't know. He just seems so weird to me.
You're unsure about Wax currently?
Yeah, I like Wayne way better.
Me too.
I'm also
Wayne
a
is
big
so
Wayne
fucking
fan.
Cool. Wayne
Wayne
is just so fucking cool.
Wayne is a very divisive character because he's supposed to be like he's like a funny guy, and there's a lot of people who are like, any character Brandon tries to make funny or witty, like Shalon or Lift and stuff like that, people either love them or hate them. So Wayne's kind of in that category of people either love him or hate him.
Huh.
I always quite liked Wayne. I seem to like Brandon's attempts at funny characters. So Waxen uses a bullet casing to jump up onto a nearby building, not caring that he was leaving the party since he had been to one almost every night since returning, and this was the first misty night in a while. He jumps through the city, annoyed with the decorative shrubs, but happy with all the metal he had to push off of. He soon gets to one of the large buildings in construction and wonders if he could climb it, as he can only push on metals and not pull. He thinks about how there used to be Mistborns, but now a man could at most only have one allomantic and one ferrochemical ability. His friend Wayne claimed to know all of the names of the different twinborn combinations, but Wax doubted that. Wax's combination was called a crasher. So what do you think about the fact that people nowadays can only have a maximum of one allomantic and one ferrochemical power? There's no Mistborns, no full ferrochemists. At
They
most,
know of.
well, Wax says it's just not a thing. So unless they're in hiding or they hide it, it sounds like it's just not a thing anymore.
Wonder if that's a thing Sayes did, to be honest. Like
Well,
on purpose.
I feel like, I mean, it's very possible Sayes did it, but I think it's also, we saw in Mistborn Era 1 how genetics kind of basically stopped people from being able, like, that was why Mistings were around, was because people started as all Mistborns when they first got the Lerasium from the Lord Ruler when he first took over, and then as, like, basically they bred with other people who didn't have powers, like, the powers got kind of, like, diluted in their body and everything. And so it seems like that same thing's happening with ferrochemy now, as I'm assuming like the Terrace people are like having relationships with like non-Terrace people for the first time. So now it's like just like with Mistings, there's only
Diluting it.
fairings.
Yeah, it's diluting or whatever.
Yeah, and considering they only like Spook was the only Mistborn that we know of left alive by the end of book 3. So he was the only person who could have passed on newer allomantic genes, like more recent ones that weren't diluted, because Vin and Ella never had kids. And as far as we know, all the other Mistborns were like killed. It was just Mistings. So it makes sense that the bloodline would be diluted quite a bit. But yeah, so there's gonna be no Mistborns or Fairings unless they get some more Lerasium somehow. It sounds like.
Wasn't there a metal that boosted the powers or whatever? I forgot what it was.
Duralumin, yes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're a Misting, you can't burn Duralumin.
No,
only
I
Mistborn
know.
could.
I was just
Yeah.
trying to remember that earlier.
So yeah, it makes some of the metals definitely a lot more, at least for for allomancy. There's a lot that are not as useful. Like if you're an atium misting, as far as we know, there might not be any atium because we were told that the atium was like Kelsier had blown it all up. So if you're an atium misting, you're fucked. If you're a duralumin misting, you're fucked. If you're an aluminum misting, you're probably fucked. There's not a lot of, only like half the powers are good. But yeah, so Wax pushes himself up as high as he could before landing on the building and climbing until he found a decent ledge to drop a bullet casing onto. He then drinks a vial of whiskey with steel shavings, thinking that anyone who didn't use alcohol for their metals was missing out. Wax then pushes himself up into the air again and shoots one of his guns to get himself closer to the narrowing tiers of the building. He grabs onto the side of the building and begins climbing and pushing his way up to the unfinished floors. Wax looks out at the city, at the lights and the new vehicles that used oil instead of horses, and wonders what Leslie would think of it. Wax then pushes off of the building and eventually falls down into the city. Once near the ground, he shoots down at the street and pushes gently against the bullet to slow his fall. Suddenly Wax hears gunshots and he rolls across the ground, although he soon realizes the gunshots are too distant to be coming at him. He listens for more gunshots as he pushes himself into the air and hurries off in the direction of another gunshot. The mist thinned tonight, so visibility was fairly good. He eventually sees someone aiming a rifle down a street towards some constables. So what do you think about Wax being drawn to the gunfire? Like, he's not able to just, like, ignore it.
I mean,
Someone has an obsession.
yeah. I think I agree with Wayne. He needs to go back to it.
Yep. Yeah, Wayne later on was like, you need to be out helping people. It's your thing. You're not meant to just be like some city lord. So Wax puts up his steel bubble and then pushes himself up and into the alleyway between the groups of people. He freezes when he hears a woman whimpering, and the man with the rifle fires at him, the steel bubble barely keeping the bullet from hitting him as it goes through his coat. Wax thinks that he should fire back, but all he can hear is the woman whimpering, and his mind is filled with thoughts of Leslie dying. Eventually he just pushes away and back up onto the roof of a nearby building. He gets shot at some more as he goes to his stomach and crawls to the edge of the roof. He aims his gun at the leader of the group as they get ready to run, but the constables shoot at them first. So what do you think about Wax's PTSD with Leslie?
Right?
Oh, now we know how badly it affected him?
Yep. Because we find out it wasn't even a woman whimpering here, it's just like some guy who got shot earlier. But he's like, he's struggling with using his guns and hearing people in pain. So we then skip forward in time to Wax getting back to his home, Ladrian Mansion. The mansion doesn't have expansive grounds, but it is 4 stories tall and has a nice garden out back. Wax does note that his carriage came back, and he thinks the drivers are finally getting used to his antics. He pushes himself up onto one of the balconies and then makes his way quietly through the dark hallway towards his rooms as he doesn't want to interact with anyone. However, his butler comes out of his bathroom as Wax enters his room and notes that a bath had been drawn for him. Tialum, the butler, asks if he should send an apology letter to Lady Set, and Wax agrees. Tilom? His name is hard. Tilom then has to speak boldly and states that the city has many constables, but that the people under their house only have Wax to rely on, and Wax thinks that the butler's words are true. If he goes bankrupt, it will be bad for the people that rely on his house. Wax then reluctantly places his guns and his mistcoat in a trunk and asks Tilom to put it somewhere safe, but to put it away for good. He'd had one last dance in the mist, but the city didn't need him like Weathering had. Tilom seems approving as he takes the trunk. Wax walks to his bathroom and thinks it is time to be Lord Waxilium, 16th High Lord of House Ladrian. What do you think about Wax putting away his guns and mistcloak?
It's a mistake.
Do you agree, Darkness? Do you think it's a mistake?
Sorry, what's up?
Do you think Wax putting away his guns and mistcloak is a mistake?
Yeah.
Do you think it's actually for good, or do you think that's going to be a lie and he's going to go back for them later?
It's not going to be for good at all.
It's not for good.
Also, what do you think about the significance of Wax being the 16th Lord of House Ladrian?
That fucking number again.
Yeah, it's the number 16. There's obviously a reason Brandon made him the 16th Lord.
Crazy.
So then we go to chapter 2. We skip forward in time another 6 months as Wax is adjusting his outfit with Tilom commenting on it next to him. He mentions how he had worn fancy clothing out in the rough so that people would either respect or underestimate him. He also notes how he had wooden buttons on his vest except for one steel button. He then swears when he hears the doorbell chime. As he hurries toward the door, Tilom mentions how Wax seems to be treating meeting a potential wife as a chore. Wax doesn't correct him. One of his older maids then talks about how happy Wax's mother would have been to see him meeting with a nice lady. So what do you think about how this custom that nobles used to have in Mistborn Era 1 of wearing all wooden buttons but with one metal one to show they weren't afraid of Allomancers has kind of like continued being a thing?
That's crazy.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, oh, it's an old tradition of mine. I'm like, dude, this is from like over 300 years ago. This is from like Era 1 stuff. What are you talking about, Wax? This isn't your tradition. Because I was like, I think like Elend and like all the other nobles did as well. So Wax then tries to tell himself not to rush and asks Miss Grimes if there are any other matters he needs to attend to today. Miss Grimes reluctantly tells him that another one of their steel shipments has been lost. Wax starts to ask for details, but then changes his mind as he knows he shouldn't get too involved. Miss Grimes continues fussing over Wax, but he tells her to calm down as he's 42 years old and not a young man anymore. As he heads towards his sitting room, one of his servants presents him with a dinner invitation, and Wax says to send a response but wait until after his meeting with Lord Harms and his daughter. So what do you think about having our main character be in his 40s when most of our main characters in the past have been in their 20s, aside from like Dalinar and Harathan?
What was the other guy? The guy who was in the red armor?
Yeah, Harathan was also, I think,
Was that
supposed
his
to be a bit
name?
older. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, he was old as fuck.
I think he was also in his 40s. He was either in his late 30s or like 40s or something. Yeah, most of our main characters are usually kind of like more young adults, whereas this book we get a 40-year-old man as our main character.
How old is Wayne?
Wayne, I believe Wax says later is like 30. He's like a good like decade younger than Wax.
Aw.
What do you think, Darkness, about having some older main characters for once?
That's interesting. It's kind of a big step up from having somebody who's always 10.
So when Wax enters the sitting room, he is shocked to not see Lord Harms and his daughter, but a 30-year-old man, Wax's friend, Wayne. Wayne picks up a clock off the mantle. I made a typo there.
Picks up the rock.
Clock off the mantle and asks Wax if he can trade him for it. Wax just says that Wayne is supposed to be in Weathering, as Wax had left him in charge. Wayne says he left a man named Barrel in charge instead, which Wax does not seem pleased with. Wayne switches the clock for a bottle of whiskey and then begins trying to question Wax. However, the door chimes again, and Wax hurriedly begins to trying to get Wayne out of the room, as he does not want Wayne there for his meeting.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad. Wayne mentions how he isn't technically here to see Wax, but instead to look into the disappearing shipments. Wax tries to protest that he wouldn't be involved when 2 of his own shipments had disappeared, but their conversation is cut off when the door is opened for Lord Harms, his daughter Steris, and another young woman that Wax doesn't recognize. Lord Harms asks who was with Wax, and Wayne puts on an accent and at some point put on new clothing and a fake mustache as he pretended to be one of Wax's uncles.
It's just crazy how fast he did that.
Yeah, Wax
That's
seems...
what I was thinking when it actually happened. I was like, what the? How did he do that?
Yeah, right. Wax assumes that Wayne used a speed bubble to do so, which he was able to do as a Bendaloy Allomancer. Wax notes that Wayne is a twin born like him and is also a gold fairist, and so he can heal himself, which is mainly helpful during combat. So what do you think of this new ability of using Bendalloy to make speed bubbles?
Cool.
I
But then
think
again, like I
Bendalloy might
said,
have
Wayne is
actually
so
been
cool.
a metal that you had brought up in the past, Mythic, when you had all your like
Yeah, I believe so,
list
yeah.
of metals.
Yeah, I don't know if I have that list anywhere, so it's been too long.
hmm What do you think, Darkness, about the Bendalloy ability?
It's is the is this the speed bubble one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's speed bubble.
Yeah, and they can't do too much around it, right?
So I think he explains later that it's like a 5-foot diameter bubble. It's either 5-foot diameter or 5-foot radius, I don't remember. And it basically speeds up time for the people inside the bubble. So like they're able to have like later a full conversation while everyone outside only feels like a second has passed.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Especially like
This is one
doing
of the
like sort of spyworks stuff.
And this is one of the 2 remaining medals that we did not have in Mistborn Era 1, because as we know there's 16. So there's obviously Bendalloy and then Bendalloy's counterpart. So what do you think Bendalloy's counterpart might be and might it do?
I'd have to do more like research again to figure out what my actual thought is on that.
I believe Bendalloy is specifically an alloy. Like I think it is the alloy, and it would be it's specifically called Bendalloy. Yeah, it's a metal alloy. So there'd be something with. So Bendalloy is made of. What is it made of? Okay, so it's made of bismuth, lead, tin, and cadmium. So we know obviously tin
Cadmium.
would not. You think it's gonna be cadmium? So it's
Yeah.
definitely not lead, because they say in Mistborn Era 1 that lead is not a elementic metal, and we know what tin does. So it's obviously either bismuth or cadmium. So you're gonna assume it's cadmium. Do you agree, Darkness? Do you think it's cadmium or do you think it's bismuth?
Am I allowed to search this up?
What, the actual metals or
Yeah.
The actual metal, yeah, it said it was. I've listed out, so it's either bismuth or cadmium are the only 2 options for what it would be as the original metal, because lead and tin are a definite no.
I'm gonna go with the other one.
You're gonna go bismuth. All right.
Yeah.
We will find out later in this book, I believe. The other one is. Also, for your reference, because I don't think it actually comes up, the ferrochemical power that is related to Bendalloy is a ferrist can store energy with Bendalloy, and then its counterpart stores breath. So I guess you could just like swim underwater for like 10 years if you have enough breath stored
I
up.
thought you meant like breath, like.
That's what
oh,
I was like, when I first read that, I was like, that seems weird, but I'm assuming it must be just like normal breath, like it stores like air in your lungs somehow. 'Cause that would be crazy if it stored like breath.
another planet's power? Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty cool.
No, but the thing is that
I
you
mean,
not.
if
Wait,
it could
no.
Oh, yeah,
if it
here we
could
go.
store breaths, you know.
So yeah, it specifically says, because in the back in the Ars Arcanum it says Gasper fairings, which is what the fairing that can store breath is, can store breath inside their metal mind. During active storage, they must hyperventilate in order for their bodies to get enough air. The breath can be retrieved at a later time, eliminating or reducing the need to breathe using the lungs while tapping the metal mind. They can also highly oxygenate their blood.
The way I would pass the fuck out.
Right? Hyperventilating and all that shit. Yeah.
You start having a panic attack, you're like, oh, might as well just start storing my metal mind as I hyperventilate here. Be really great for people with lots of anxiety. Also, what do you think of Wayne's combination of abilities? That he has Bendalloy and Gold. He can heal himself and he can create speed bubbles.
Kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
that is pretty cool. Is it? Do you know if the bubble is like portable?
So I believe he explains at one point when they have their little conversation later that once he places the bubble, it can't move, but he can place it wherever he is. Like I think he's like the center of it when he like starts burning his Bendalloy.
What if like how would that work? There's other speed stuff in this besides the bubble, right?
So
Like
ferrochemical
storing speed in general.
fairings can store speed, but that's like a completely separate thing. I think the only speed thing for allomancers outside of this would be just like pewter giving you like kind of like a lot of like power to keep moving. You're not really faster, but you can like keep moving without getting exhausted quicker.
Huh.
So that's how Vin and Kelsier often like traveled large distances together, was they would like burn a lot of pewter and then you get pewter drag, which would like put you basically into a coma for a few hours when you stopped burning it.
Okay. I was just wondering because like if you put that against somebody who can like move fast, would that work?
I'm not sure. It's a good question. Gonna be lots of different combinations we'll potentially get to see throughout Mistborn Era
There's
2.
too many.
There's like a million. There's so many combinations you could have. I feel like because there's like 16 and 16. So Wayne continues on to pretend to be an uncle on Wax's mother's side, and Lord Harm seems to be accepting it well. Wax is annoyed but assumes that this ruse is going to continue throughout his meeting. Wayne bows to Steris, as does Wax, and Steris eyes Wayne's previous outfit in the corner of the room critically. Steris then introduces the other woman as her cousin Marassi. Lord Harms and the two women sit down, and then Wax sits on a smaller couch across from them, with Wayne sitting in a chair near Wax. Wax then awkwardly asks about Steris' health, and she replies that it is suitable. Wayne makes a pun before covering it up by asking about Lord Harms's cane. Steris then bluntly states the downfalls of Wax's house, mainly being how his uncle had made poor financial decisions along with being a social recluse, and how Wax's time in the roughs had not done him any favors in high society. Steris then states how her own family, although in good financial standing, is not well known and her father has no male heirs. She says that makes their situations good for each other and she had drawn up an agreement for them. Steris hands Wax a 20-page document, along with a copy to her father and keeps one for herself. She then states that the agreement outlines their courtship phase that she thinks should last 8 months, as well as conjugal encounters after marriage until an heir is born. She also states that if that is not enough romance for Wax, there is a section about potential mistresses. She also states there is room for her own
What?
dalliance.
Wait, what? No, didn't she say something about? I don't remember. There should have something else before that. I swear.
Well, so she says the conjugal stuff. So it's like she's like we can have like until an heir is born, we will have sex between 1 to 3 times a week. And then if that's not enough, you can have mistresses. And she's like, also after an heir is born, there's a room about if I want my own dalliances. But she would not do that until after an heir is born, so there's not a worry about who would be like the heir to the Ladrian house. So yeah, what did you think about first of all, Wax meeting to discuss a potential marriage?
That was interesting to go through, like that whole thing, especially
Yeah.
with the clauses they discussed and everything. But also the fact that when later on he pays and he's like talking about how he won't go. I'm pretty sure it's him, right? Where he won't go into like a romantic thing without like commitment.
Yeah, I believe he does.
Right. So I'm just like that clause of like mistresses and stuff is really gonna be interesting.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, I want romance, and she just assumes that means sex, and I'm like, I don't think that's what he means, Steris. I think he means like he wants a relationship that he's like, it doesn't just feel like a random political marriage. He wants romance in the relationship. He wants to feel loved. And she's like, oh, you can have a mistress. Or multiple mistresses. But yeah, so what did you think about Steris coming by with a 20-page contract? Do you think that's normal, or do you think that's just Steris?
These are like nobles or whatever. That's normal.
What do you think, Mythic?
I mean, I don't know. She's just very weird to me. Way too like prim, proper, and organized.
So we get Lord Harms then awkwardly telling Steris to maybe move on to less personal of a topic. Steris then brings up religion, and Wax states that he is a Pathian. Steris calls it a safe choice, but strange because apparently their god specifically tells people not to worship him. Steris states that she is a survivorist, and Wax thinks that some of them aren't so bad. So apparently Wax is not a fan of people who followed the survivor. Wax then asks if anyone would like some tea, and Marassi states she would. So Wax goes over to the tea stand to get some for her. Wayne gets up to examine the bookshelves, but really he wants to get close enough to Wax to put them into a speed bubble together. Wax asks Wayne what he thinks, and Wayne replies that he likes Marassi, but Steris seems insane. Wax says that this is his duty now, and that it isn't about Lessie when Wayne brings her up. Wayne then mentions that his speed bubble is ending, and they cough to cover up the weird noise that would be made by their sped-up conversation. Wax then hands Marassi...
Which is so cool that, like, they freeze time around it, and then all of it, or, like, you know, whatever, and then, like, when it's over, everything speeds up real quick.
Yeah, so
to, like, catch up.
Yeah, so for, like, the people around them, it's like they did everything in a second, so they'd be like... And they'd be like, what the fuck was that? And he's like, coughing. Like, sorry, it got stuck in my throat. Yes, Wax then hands Marassi a cup of tea and sits down, holding onto the bullet that felt too light to be steel. Wax then tries to get more information about Steris, who states she is writing an autobiography and that she likes plays. So yeah, what did you think about Wayne using his speed bubble to have a secret conversation with Wax?
What else would you use it for aside from changing your outfit?
You could also use it to like reload a gun or something.
Yeah.
In the middle of a fight.
That's cheating.
What do you mean that's cheating?
That's cheating.
What did you think, Darkness, about using the speed bubble for the secret conversation?
That's cool. Also, that gun thing.
Cheating. Who said?
They also say at one point that apparently if you try and shoot out of a speed bubble, the
Yeah,
bullets like
yeah.
go all over the place.
Slows down, yeah, and then it goes like crazy at the end, yeah.
Yeah, because
And
of the
everything's
change
back
in
to
like
normal.
time and gravity or whatever.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. So you can't use
So
it to
you
just
reload
like
and then
kill
you shoot.
everyone. Yeah, you have to take the speed bubble down before you start shooting again.
How fast can you activate and deactivate it?
I'm assuming as quickly as you can anything else, like
But
any
like, you
other
can't just
ability.
say that because you can blink faster than you can like run a fucking 5 steps.
Well, I'm saying like because you can activate and deactivate any of the you are like start burning and like stop burning any of your elementic abilities like at the same speed pretty much. Just like you, it's
Same
basically like an on-off
question
switch.
last time, and it's just so annoying because I want to know how like if you can just like at this point spam it.
You probably can. I mean, it depends how much Bendalloy you would have in your system, right? Like it's all based on your reserves of the metal.
And also, does it burn quicker at the start, like a car?
We don't know. So that's the thing is like there was I think they say like different elementic metals burn at different rates. Like I think some of them like I think atium burned up really quickly and like tin burned really slowly. So like
Right? No, that's what I'm saying. But like, also, what I'm trying to figure out is it a burst in the beginning when you first burn it, or is it just an even out like?
I'd assume it's an
Right.
even output where it's just like on or off. So it's always
Huh.
like a 5-foot radius around you as far as we know. So it's just like technically it's there at all times. It's just you turn it on or off.
But then, how the fuck did that one dude control it so
What do you mean?
weirdly?
All Wayne did was walk over to an area where he knew that the others wouldn't be caught in the speed bubble and Wax would
No,
be.
yeah, I know, I know.
So he's just really good at measuring how big his speed bubble would be. Also, the question is, do you
Wait, that's not how that works though. Because if you use your power like for like greater strength, the output is more, right?
well, so you can flare metals. We learned in Era 1. So like I believe like when you used pewter, it like gave you an some I don't know the exact amount, but say it gave you like a 2 times modifier to your strength, speed, balance. So it's a straight on off. Then you can also flare it, and flaring is the thing I don't fully understand the best.
That's weird. You need to do more research on that, or you're gonna get very judged by me.
So however, the mention of the play leads into a discussion about how a woman, who is a cousin of Steris but not related to Marassi, was taken hostage at the theater and they hadn't heard from her since. Apparently people recognized the men as some of the men that were with the Vanishers, that had been taking the rail shipments. Saracen notices the bullet in Wax's hand and asks if his past is really behind him, and Wax insisted it is as he tucks the bullet into his sleeve. Wayne silently encourages Wax to try pushing on the bullet, and Wax discreetly puts some steel shavings in his tea and then realizes the bullet is aluminum. Waxon suggests going to the wedding dinner that he was invited to as a couple with Steris tonight, which Lord Harm seems to think is a great idea. So what do you think about Wax getting real interested in the robberies?
I mean, Wayne knows how to manipulate him, that's for sure.
Wayne was playing that dude so good though.
Mhm.
Yeah. Also, what do you think about people using aluminum bullets to combat Allomancers?
I mean, it works. Like, aluminum it's like, when they make kryptonite bullets, stuff like Superman, the weakness of Allomancers. So.
Because they can't push or pull on it, and they can't even spot it with their like blue line stuff.
Would wood not also just work too?
I think it would, but I don't think wood would probably work well in a gun.
Well, I mean, there's other.
I mean, they had stone-tipped arrows in the prologue to also like go against Allomancers.
I mean, yeah, but you could also just literally get like crossbows and shit.
Yeah, but it seems like if you want to use a gun though, you have to use aluminum because that's like the only metal they can't push or pull against. So Wax tries to covertly speak to Wayne, but Steris.
I'm sorry. It's interesting though that we haven't seen any like glass dagger type of stuff being brought up.
Yeah, apparently the glass daggers and obsidian daggers are kind of out of fashion.
Nuh-uh. I would love one.
They're out of fashion nowadays. It's all about the aluminum bullets.
So they downgraded but upgraded at the same time.
Don't bring a knife to a gunfight, Darkness.
Yeah, okay.
You can if you bend
Yeah.
bullets.
Yeah,
Like,
you can if you bend bullets or could push fucking metal daggers around.
So Wax tries to covertly speak to Wayne, but Steris notices and asks if he needs to see a zinc counselor, which I find hilarious that they have like zinc counselors.
they added therapy.
Yep. using specifically soothing or rioting. I don't remember which one zinc is. Zinc soothing or rioting? I'm assuming
I'm gonna
soothing.
assume that's very unhealthy, though.
It's rioting.
Probably.
They're like, let me remember your trauma. Let me riot your trauma so that you can get through it quicker.
Oh, right, but I feel like if they use it in a way, which I assume they would, considering that they have the power to do so, where they would change the person's emotions in order to make them feel better,
Yeah, possibly. It's
that
like,
would
okay,
be
remember your
horrible.
trauma and let me like riot
Fix
like
it.
calmness and like other things so that it doesn't feel as horrible when you think about it. Like
Personally,
reprogram your brain.
my like self-awareness and my like, I would have a whole existential crisis. Is this me or is this you? But you know.
So Waxon insists he doesn't and says the meeting went well. Sarah's asked if he'll have the contract reviewed by their meeting for the wedding dinner tomorrow, and Rax replies that he will. The three then leave, and Wax is now alone with Wayne. He asks about the bullet, and Wayne replies that it was left at the theater robbery. He apparently traded a cop for it for a cobblestone. Wax just sighs in response. Wayne trades a pencil for one of Wax's pens, as Wax tells him that the bullet doesn't change anything. Wax replies that he is going to look into it either way, as he decided he wanted to. So what do you think about Wayne's trading that he does?
It's valid, you know?
What do you think, Mythic, about Wayne trading things without people's consent?
And hey, if you could slow time down, fuck,
Well,
I do that
first
shit
of
all the
all,
time. I'll be honest.
like, is it really without consent if they would totally take the trade anyway?
The constable definitely would not have taken the trade. He was
What
not
are you
trading
talking
evidence for
about?
a stone.
What if it was like a really pretty stone?
No.
Polished stone, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Wayne basically just is a kleptomaniac, but he gives something back to make up for it. So Wayne then mentions how there have been 4 people kidnapped so far, which is the main reason he's looking into this, as it isn't simply stealing objects. He asks Wax for a bit of help with a place to start, so Wax asks for some details. Wayne explains that there have been 8 robberies, including the theater one, and that 4 women have been taken hostage over the last 3 robberies. Wax states that the gang is too well funded, so the robberies are probably a distraction, and they're either after something unnoticeable that was taken along with everything else, or they are after extortion money. Wayne asks if Wax is at least a little invested in the case, and Wax insists that he isn't, even though that isn't the truth. Wayne doesn't believe him due to multiple factors, and says that saving people is who Wax is, no matter his title or status in the city. Wayne then leaves. So do you think Wayne is actually just here because of the kidnappings, or do you think he's partially also here to try and encourage Wax to join him again?
Yeah, I think he's trying to get Wax
He wants
to
him back.
come back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Think he misses his friend?
for sure.
And then we get chapter 3, which starts with our broadsheet page. I think the audiobook reads out the broadsheet pages, right, Mythic?
I don't think so.
Did it not?
I don't think so. What's the broadsheet page?
It's like a newspaper. Has a bunch of little articles about things.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, because I don't remember anything about that.
Okay, I'll give you I have a little summary of it anyways. For some reason I thought I had read somewhere that the audiobooks would read them out. So first of all, we get a little note about Alamancer Jack exploring the pits of Atlantia, where there's a group of Koloss and how a written account from the explorer is given later in the paper.
Yeah, that definitely didn't happen, by the way.
We also get a note about House Tecuel inventing a new type of train car that has a timer lock so that it's safer from train bandits such as the Vanishers. There's also a recounting of the Phantom Railcar from witnesses. There's mentions of tensions between a trade union. There's a new soothing parlor opening up to give you an emotional massage along with a physical one. And then there's also the start of the recounting of Alamancer Jack's story. And as a note, the last thing we haven't read on Canon Unbounded is Alamancer Jack's story, which is specifically the Pits of Altania story. So you get that as like a little side story in Arcanum Unbounded of this guy named Alamancer Jack. But yeah, do you like these little did you like getting a broadsheet to learn more about what's going on in the world?
Yeah, I just got it now, so yeah. I guess.
What do you think about it, Darkness?
Yeah,
did you read it at all?
Yeah, I did. I was going through it.
I'll be honest, when I first read Mistborn Era 2, I was like, I glanced at the titles and like, I'm not reading this. I definitely did not. And there's I totally skipped them over, besides reading like the little titles for each section. But I heard that there is like sometimes like little clues to like world hoppers or other things happening in the world that are kind of cool, like they're little like Easter eggs and stuff. So I'm like, okay, I should definitely read them and make sure to summarize them for the podcast.
Dude, how are you just gonna skim over stuff like this, knowing how well that these books do stuff like that?
I just skipped it. I was like, that's just too much. I can't. It's such small text. I was like, fuck that shit. I think I read like part of what I was like, nah, I'm good. So we skip to 8 hours later as Wax looks out his window, wishing the mist would come tonight, even though he wasn't going out. He turns on his electric lights, amazed by them, even though the words of founding had mentioned electricity. He sits down at his desk, which used to be his uncle's, and tries to go through the financial documents. However, he gets distracted by the stack of broadsheets nearby. He eventually starts doing some light reading of them, surprised that the first attack of the Vanishers had started over 8 months ago. So what do you think about the fact that the mists only come out sometimes now? They don't come out every night.
Say's changed the world, so.
Do you think Say's is doing this on purpose, or do you think it's because the reason the mists were out so much was because preservation was dying, and so now that the powers have been recontained, they're not around, the mists aren't around as much?
Maybe it's like a controlled outburst for the mistings question mark and stuff. Like to send out his powers in general.
I see. So do you think you still have to snap to become a misting?
Yeah, probably.
I don't know about that.
Also, what do you think about Say's apparently specifically giving people information about electricity when he remade the world?
Kind of cool, to be honest.
He's like, oh yeah, this is apparently a thing that's going to happen in the future. Here's some information about it.
I mean, to be fair, it goes along with who he was as a person, so.
Yeah, he liked collecting information and sharing it. That was his whole thing. So Wax can't seem to find any information about what was stolen in the first robbery, except that it was owned by the Tekiel family, and that 3 months after the robbery, the head of the Tekiel family had denounced the constables for not recovering his cargo. Wax notes that the rest of the shipments had all been either foodstuffs or seal shipments, and that the kidnappings had started around the 5th robbery. The goods had also been taken very quickly, even with the train cars having increased security and better locks as the robberies kept happening. Wax thought for a moment that they might use a speed bubble, but it didn't make enough sense as they weren't big enough. So how do you think they might be stealing all this stuff?
I mean,
is this a question of before or after he discussed how he thinks it's happening in life?
Well, he says at one point that he doesn't fully know how it's working. He thinks oh, maybe they were using ferrochemists with extra strength, or allomancers with pewter. But they're not super sure. I don't think he ever comes to a actual conclusion, does he?
Does he not go over the
he goes over why he thinks they're stealing things, but I was saying, how do you think they're getting away with it?
Oh, well,
by power, to be honest, a combined power somewhere.
Do you think maybe they just have a lot of really good allomancers, fast ones, strong ones, just a combination of that?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Man. I was more interested in the why they were doing it than the how, to be honest.
I was trying to figure out how to as well. And I'm wondering if it's one of those, that same situation where they form a group, in the first Mistborn book.
Like how they used to have the what were they called? The groups that Kelsier's group was.
Yeah. And it was just it's just a variation of each, thing.
They just got their specialist in each of a different power.
Yeah. Cause for that book, right? We figured out, oh yeah, they have each person for this set of skills, but we don't know how in depth their skills go. And I feel that's how this situation is, where it's it's not a shit ton of people, but it's also not just one or two. It's a certain amount of groups divided into the skills they're good at.
Yeah.
And we just gotta see how good they're at it,
So Tilom then interrupts Wax by asking if he'd like some tea. Wax replies that he doesn't care what type of tea, but Tilom asks Wax a few questions to determine the type of tea to give him. Tilom notes that Wax seems very intent on his research that he was supposed to be avoiding, and Wax replies that Lord Harms had seemed upset that Wax didn't know about the robberies. Tilom calls that an excuse. When Wax takes a sip of the tea, he swears by Preservation's wings about how good it is. So I wanted to make a note that this Preservation's wings comment is likely in direct reference to Vin, because we have at the very end when she's kind of guiding Elend in the final battle, she has these misty white wings coming out of her. So I believe that's a very specific reference to that. Because as far as we know, otherwise, Preservation did not have wings.
Unless, you don't know. We didn't see him at full power.
I mean, we didn't. It's true. I'm going to see if I can find a picture of that, but I'm struggling to find the picture I'm thinking of. I'm sure there is a picture of it. I know there's a picture. I've seen the picture before. Then as Preservation. Oh, yeah. This is kind of what I was thinking. I don't think this is the exact image. But
Angel Vin.
This is similar to what I was thinking of, but it's not the exact image.
It's Angel Vin.
But yeah. So Tilom then tells Wax that he believes the first stolen shipment was of wool, which confuses Wax. Before Tilom leaves, he asks for a large sheet of paper to try to work out his thoughts on. Eventually, Chalome comes back with an artist's easel and a large pad of paper on it that his uncle used to keep for his sister to draw on. Wax feels bad for not thinking of his sister much, or seeing her over the last 20 years he was out in the roughs, as she had died in the same accident as his uncle. What do you think about the fact that Wax doesn't really seem to have any family? Like, we've not seen his mom or dad around. His uncle's dead, his sister's dead.
It's that simple. He killed them all.
He killed them himself.
Yeah.
Damn.
He wanted the power for himself, obviously. Or maybe he's just having a little Caldon situation where everyone he loves dies.
What do you think, Mythic, about Wax's lack of family?
I mean, hey, it makes it perfect for him. Every hero has to have a tragic backstory, right?
His little main character moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Except for Serene and Elantris, where she had parents who were like, please just come home. You don't need to marry this, like, you don't have to pretend to get married to a dead guy. Just come home.
She wasn't
She's
the
like,
hero.
no.
She wasn't the hero of that story.
So Wax then begins writing out the different dates and types of shipments. He notes that it seemed an odd time of year to ship wool, and he went through his uncle's old ledgers on their competitors and determined that Tekiel had likely been shipping aluminum and claimed it as wool to avoid taxes. That was why he took so long to complain about nothing being found. It was also why there was so long between the first and second robbery, because the Vanishers were likely selling and making use of the aluminum that they had stolen. So what do you think about the Vanishers going after a shipment of aluminum to help kind of like prepare for further attacks?
These people have the stuff well like plotted out and everything.
Seems like they had a big plan ready.
Sure. I mean, it definitely seems like they've been planning a little bit, you know.
So Wax then considers that all the kidnapped victims could be Allomancers, as they were all from well-known families, though they hadn't been revealed as Allomancers. Wax thinks that many people keep quiet about their powers, especially if they were soothers or rioters, although some people would flaunt their abilities, such as people running for government who could use copper so that they could prove that they wouldn't be influenced by other Allomancers. Wax states that he's pretty sure all the kidnapped victims would be Allomancers, and that was why the Vanishers had aluminum bullets, and that they also had aluminum-lined hats to prevent their emotions from being messed with. So what do you think about the aluminum foil hats? I love the aluminum foil hats so much.
Cool, honestly. I don't know why nobody thought of that before.
Well, I think aluminum wasn't very common in Mistborn Era 1. I think pretty much only the Lord Ruler had access to it.
It's funny. It's gonna be even funnier when there's space travel.
They're just gonna make their whole spacesuits out of aluminum or like aluminum lined so that they can't get like rioted or soothed. Yeah, I just love though how Brandon took like the tinfoil hat idea for like crazy people and made like an actual thing with aluminum foil hats to prevent people from messing with your
Crazy
emotions.
people. Actually, that's very useful. First of all,
Yeah, no, it keeps all the aliens away. Like, what
right.
are you talking about?
Also, what do you think?
You never seen that meme? Aliens.
Aliens. I actually watched that show when I was a teenager.
Oh my
Don't know what you're
god.
talking about.
Yeah, you're super. Oh my god, you don't, Darkness? Really?
Nope.
Ancient Aliens. It was the fucking stupidest show. It was on History Channel.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Never seen this guy before?
Aliens. Your Darkness is so out of the loop.
What do you mean? How long ago was this?
Also, what do you think about the Vanishers kidnapping potential Allomancers?
They're not kidnapping them. The Allomancers are going willingly.
Oh, you think they're just like pretending to kidnap them?
Yeah, it's all part of the plan.
I think they're
It's
actually
just like how the
kidnapping
smuggling
them.
is happening.
I do think there's something bigger for sure, but
See. So Wax.
I'm sorry, but I didn't want to go through like the dark thoughts of like what could happen, but considering what the Lord Ruler did to those people, I wouldn't be surprised if someone wanted to follow through with the same footsteps.
oh my goodness.
You think maybe they're like
Or-
killing off Allomancers?
Or like breeding camps.
You think that's why it's all women?
God.
Yeah.
Because they want to breed more Allomancers?
You see, I didn't want to say it like that, but yeah.
I mean, it could make sense, especially if like the powers are being less common.
Yeah.
They're trying to
Plus,
get like
it's not like
the.
this
They're
whole
going for the
fucking-
whole like pure bloodline thing of Allomancers. They're gonna become the Nazis.
I mean,
no.
what if they're trying to create Mistborns again?
That's what I was
Maybe.
thinking. But
Yeah.
like, I didn't. I didn't want to go that route. But like, it's not.
I mean,
it's
it's a
not
valid-
anything new
it's a
to
valid
this
thought.
world.
It's definitely a valid thought, especially if they are all Allomancers, the Vanishers. It'd be like, oh yeah, if we like have kids and stuff with other Allomancers and we create like this pure race and try and have like Mistborn
Force
children.
them to have kids, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it'd be like Ellen's dad trying to create an army of Mistings or Mistborn to work for him, that of his own children. So Wax determines that the kidnappings were the true purpose of the robberies, and that the other robberies had all been aluminum or allomantic metals. Tulum then tries to bring Wax back to working on their house ledgers, but Wax is too distracted. Tulum then mentions that Wax's uncle had often gambled on horse racing, and although he often won money at it, his time spent away from their house's dealings caused the house to become financially destitute and mismanaged. Tulum then leaves, and Wax glances at his pocket watch to see it was past 2 a.m. Might be best to get some sleep, as most people slept at this time of night. Wax then decides to do a nightly prayer, as he hadn't done one in a while. He slips an earring into his ear and then stands by the window, as Pathians didn't have a typical prayer form. He then begins to think towards Harmony, asking how things are up in the mists, and assumes that life is good for Harmony since he is a god. He feels a sense of amusement in return, although he isn't sure if he just imagines that or not. He then tells Harmony he's in a bind and asks if what he is doing is right. He thinks of the tenets of the Pathian religion, that there wasn't much besides doing more good than harm. I almost said more harm than good. More good than harm.
I mean, that's probably the counter religion, you know?
And reviewing the ancient religions to try to retain their
the
moral codes.
counter religion is the better religion, obviously.
Yeah, the counter religion is the Calcium religion.
Yeah, the survivor religion is better than this religion.
It's also stated to not worship Harmony, as doing good was worship enough. So what do you think about Pathians using earrings to speak to Harmony?
Kind of crazy, to be honest. Metal.
Ruin.
Yeah, it's like... like, Vin, yeah.
Yeah, they're literally spiking themselves so they can talk to God, which makes sense.
Yeah,
okay, but if I got a piercing and then God started talking to me, I'd be crazy.
Unless you know specifically that God does talk to you through piercings.
I mean, you're not crazy, Darkness? Like, I thought we've already established you were crazy.
I was crazy once.
Also, do you think that Harmony is actually listening to Wax, or is he just imagining those feelings?
Nah, he's actually listening.
You think Harmony's actually there kind of like chuckling as Wax is like, things must be good as a god, huh?
Right.
Yes.
I do, I agree. I think he is actually chuckling.
I mean, he's the 16th, you know?
He is the 16th Lord of House Ladrian. I wouldn't be surprised to say he's kind of kept an eye on the descendants of all his friends.
Right.
He's like, oh yeah, there's Breeze's great whatever grandson. He's a cool dude. He'd also been converted soon after leaving Elendel, and he had been given a Pathian earring on the train out to the roughs by a woman he was sure was one of the faceless immortals. All Pathians wore an earring while praying. As he considers his life in the city, something inside Wax tells him to use his talents and he'll figure things out. Wax smiles and wonders if Harmony is really listening, as he often just feels a sense of encouragement after praying. Wax then briefly
I mean, that's how everybody in faith ever thinks that somebody's talking to them, but okay.
Yeah, that's why Wax is like, I don't know if I'm actually hearing from Harmony or not, because, like, we know he does actually exist, but also, like, I could just be, like, assuming things.
This man just doesn't have faith, that's all.
Wax then briefly thinks of Lessie again as he takes out his earring and goes to start working on the house ledgers again. So what do you think about a Khandra potentially giving Wax this earring and converting him to being a Pathian?
Honestly, cool as shit.
So apparently the Khandras are still around, even though they all took out their spikes.
I knew it. We knew that.
And that was
insane, so...
That was the end of our chapters. My overview questions are...
I know, that feels so short. Like,
it did feel short, but it was like a long... I think maybe just because it's the beginning of a book, so there was a lot of re-explaining things.
I just don't think that you had good notes. That's what it is.
It's very possible I didn't have good notes.
It's crazy because
just terrible.
At first it was a lot. Like my first chapter said it was around like 30 to 40 minutes.
Same. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I listened at 1.5 speed, so...
Right.
Yeah, it was a lot, but there was a lot of like... rehashing and just like kind of explaining the world. So like there was a lot of stuff where I was like, I can summarize this down quite a bit.
The second chapter was like 10 minutes and then the third one was like 20 minutes. So maybe you just have to, you know, get better.
I got like 2 minutes into chapter 4 because I thought it was going to be longer. But honestly, I went to go listen to chapter 3 and I was like, this is the last thing I remember, so I don't know what I actually heard.
I read the first 2 words of the next chapter because I was like turning the page or whatever, right?
Yeah.
The first 2 words of the next chapter are hilarious.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck?
So the first 2 words are Harmony's forearms. Which is apparently a curse. Harmony's forearm.
That sounds like, what the fuck do you mean?
I actually do remember him cursing a lot by saying harmony and shit.
Yeah, he says by harmonies whatever, by preservation something, rust and ruin.
Yeah, I was like, what? Like,
I'm sure the survivalists have a bunch of Kelsier-related swears.
I know.
I can't wait
waiting
for
to hear
those.
that.
By the spear through Kelsier's chest.
Yeah. Like, right?
By the backslap of the Lord Ruler.
Oh, the one that
Oh my
killed him?
gosh.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, some of our review questions. First of all, I just want to know your overall impressions of some of our main characters. So what's your first of all your overall impression of Wax?
It seems like he's in denial.
Yeah, he needs his Wayne.
Yeah. I mean, what is a Wax without a Wayne? I mean, obviously.
Yeah, what was your overall impression of Wayne?
I love Wayne. Wayne is awesome.
He needs his wax.
Yeah, but no, Wayne is how I would be if I had powers like this. It's fucking crazy. Love
Also,
Wayne so much.
what is your overall impression of Steris, Wax's potential betrothed?
She reminds.
The bitch that like I have to be in control of everything. Yeah,
Yes.
no, like some shit's gonna fucking happen with her.
She reminds me of the weather lady.
The weather lady?
Yeah, you know the one that I think is.
Oh, Set's daughter?
Breezes.
Yeah.
She reminds me of the girl that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that girl. She reminds me of the Breeze. Yeah,
Yeah.
the woman who liked Breeze so much. Which I guess.
Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because I don't find them similar.
Really?
Steris is like
sounded
super
essentially the
uptight,
same.
serious, and Alriad was like flouncy and like cutesy and like annoying. Like they're both kind of annoying, but like they're annoying in different ways.
Can you define flouncy?
Like she's like all like skipping around and being like, oh, I have like these big, like all these big skirts and dresses and like, oh, I love Breeze and da 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 da, and like she's just like.
Yeah, all at the same time as she's manipulating the fuck out of him.
Yeah, but Sarah seems like a lot
And
more
you're
like
telling me that you don't think
straightforward
that
and
she's
serious.
manipulating the heck out of Wax? I feel like she's manipulating this man. It's only gonna get worse. I already know it.
Which just means it's gonna get great, you know?
I agree, but
yeah. Also, what do you think of the way that the world is now that Harmony has been gone for the last 300 plus years? I think it's technically like 341 because the broadsheet says it's like the year 341. Yeah, it's 341. So yeah, what do you think of how the world has changed?
kinda weird. I definitely will say that so far of like the last few books that after we've read Warbreaker, this is probably the one that's kept my attention the most.
Oh really?
Yeah.
The most or the least?
The most so far.
Oh, huh.
The most so far, yeah. Like it's very interesting because I like the whole mystery thing because I like to figure out what's going on. So I'm over here trying to figure out why they're abducting.
You like the kind of like detective style stuff.
Exactly. I like this. This book's kind of cool.
I'm kind of iffy about it because I'm not big into like
Thinking?
these types of settings in general.
Like more modern settings or closer to modern.
Well, I want closer to modern or modern settings.
This is like early or I guess late industrial. It's like industrial kind of. Like the Roughs is kind of like Wild West, and then in the city it's kind of like industrial era.
Yeah.
You said there was going to be one that was in space, right? When's that?
Well, that's gonna be Era 4.
Oh, okay.
This is
That's
Era
the one
2.
that's not out yet, right?
It's not, Era 3 is not even out yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be way in the future. Era 4 is probably gonna be like some of the last books he writes. Gotcha. I think Era 4 Mistborn is supposed to be like pretty much the end.
How would you feel if Brandon Sanderson died before writing that book?
Oh my god!
Don't say that! Don't say that! It would hurt me greatly. Okay, I do know though that Brandon.
With that thought, what if he trusts somebody else to write it and they just don't write as good as he does?
Well, that's the thing is he's actually currently working with some other authors, talking about having some of them try some Cosmere books that are not considered main series. So probably stuff that'd be similar to what's in Arcanum Unbounded, So he is looking into having some other people try it, so that if something does happen to him, they would have like his style, and he'd be able to correct them before then on how to write it better, so that if they could finish it for him if need be.
At that point, Midnight, you as a super fan should just like write fanfiction.
I don't think I'd be good enough to write it. I wouldn't trust my writing ability.
That's the thing, though. It doesn't have to be that good. It's fanfiction.
I would love to see Midnight's fanfiction of this.
Oh my god, I don't even know what I would write about.
This is my point of view of what would happen after, and then you just go on from there.
I guess so. Yeah, my last overview question is: where do you think the plot for this book is going?
The end of the world, like usual.
Yeah, something's happening for sure. Yeah.
Do you think like we're gonna get like a full resolution to this whole like kidnapping detective thing in this book? Is that going to be like the main plot, or is that going to be something that spans over Era 2?
I'm gonna say that it gets like they get the idea of why it's happening and what they need to do to stop it or like to fix it or whatever, or like if they need to, but I don't feel like it's gonna like get resolved this book.
Okay. So you think they're gonna get like a better feel for it, but it's gonna like be a continuing like bad guy group or something?
Yeah.
Do you agree, Mythic, or do you think it's gonna be?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely gonna be like a Team Aqua from Pokemon kind of thing. Like, I think it's Team Aqua. Maybe it's a Magma. I don't remember which one had that.
Both of them have the same thing.
Yeah, they're
They
basically
have the same philosophy.
Yeah, it's just
one of them
wants land, the other one wants water.
Yeah, they were basically counterparts to each other.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
I think you might be thinking of the bad guys from Black and White instead.
I don't know. One of them wants like the end of all like people or whatever, like that like Pokemon no longer being owned by people. I don't remember who that was.
Yeah, it's that one.
Yeah, that's Black and White. That's I don't remember what their group. Team Galactic, is it? Or is that no? That's 4th Gen, isn't it?
No. But those people, that's who it reminds me of.
Is it Team Plasma or Team Galactic?
I thought it was Plasma.
Maybe Plasma.
Is it not Plasma? It is Plasma. I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think you're thinking of that group.
Too much of a Pokemon nerd to be wrong.
Hey.
Yeah, so I will say that like when I was first reading these books, like I've never really been much into like guns and like Wild West era stuff. Like
me neither.
Setting, it was probably not my favorite, but I will say I found each book in Era 4 I found more and more interesting plot wise. So there's 4 books, and I found like each book in I was getting like I didn't enjoy Alloy of Law very much. I think just because of my personal preferences, which are not the same as your guys' as always. But my personal preference, I wasn't the biggest fan of Alloy of Law, but I really got into Mistborn Era 2 in like the last half of kind of the Era 2 series, because there's 4 books total. And so like each book I was like, oh, this is getting more and more interesting. So I think you guys will really enjoy it, because yeah, Wax is very much a detective character. If you're a big fan of that, Mythic, you'll enjoy this a lot.
Are we reading all 4 books?
Yeah, we're gonna read all 4 books.
Okay. All right. I was hoping we didn't have a break or anything.
No, we're gonna read all 4 Mistborn Era 2, because they're a bit shorter than Stormlight stuff. So I think we're gonna read all 4 books, and then we probably will go back into Oathbringer for Stormlight after Mistborn Era 2.
No, we should definitely go into Alamancer Jack.
Well, I was thinking we might do Alamancer Jack in between Alloy of Law and the second book, because it's literally just like a short story within Arkham and Bandit. It's gonna be like a 1 episode or not even a full episode thing. So we'll probably do it like the end of Alloy of Law. But yeah, so that's the kind of plan for this, is we're gonna do all of Mistborn Era 2, because I feel comparatively to Stormlight, like you kind of have to finish Mistborn Era 2 all at once. Like it would be weird to stop it partway through. Yeah, I think you guys will be very interested in all that. So thank you guys. I should probably tell you guys what chapters we're doing next week.
Yeah, you should probably do that.
Chapters 4 to 6 for next week.
Only done this how many times now?
I know, right? Well, I've been doing it for over 2 years. Yeah, so chapters 4 to 6 next week. It's about the same amount of pages, but I think it'll be, as we get into it, a little bit more to summarize, because it'll be a little less kind of recap of how the world works. So thank you to Hubris, Kaladin Dies in Book 3, and Kyle for being our Patreons. We really appreciate you guys. Please,
so funny listening to her speed through that.
Even if you do not want to pay, please feel free to visit our Patreon. You can participate in discussions. I post there whenever a new episode goes live. So yeah, feel free to come hang out at our Patreon. It is the Shardbreaker podcast, and thank you guys all so much for listening. Bye!
Bye!
Bye!